downtown where you can get a date for 50, 60, 70, even 80% off the original social marketplace price. Coming to paperback and e-readers, Isis Dark Incubus. The goddess next door gets enthralled in a romantic entanglement with an evil incubus in this all-new Isis series adventure. Pre-order your copy of Isis Dark Incubus at Amazon.com and other online booksellers everywhere. Better get the coleslaw, y'all, because we're having us a barbecue. New York Governor Kathy Hochul is planning to allocate money to pay for migrants who are living in New York City.
The migrant crisis taking center stage in Governor Hochul's new budget. She's asking the legislature to give Mayor Adams several $1 billion in new aid.
But CBS 2 political reporter Marcia Kramer reports Governor Hochul is also going to Washington once again this week to demand federal support.
Insisting it's an economic mistake not to help thousands of asylum seekers who keep arriving here. Governor Hochul uses rainy day funds and tax receipts to help Mayor Adams deal with the migrant crisis.
Companies won't do business in New York if there are thousands of people sleeping on the streets, or the quality of life is dramatically impacted because the city is forced to cut essential services.
So even though she faces a $4.3 billion budget gap, the governor made sure to help asylum seekers in her $233 billion spending proposal. The $2.4 billion in migrant aid will help pay for some 3,000 beds at shelters at Floyd Bennett Field, the Creedmoor Psychiatric Center, and Randall's Island, legal and case management services, health services including testing for communicable diseases, programs to relocate migrants to other parts of the state and provide rent subsidies, and National Guard expenses.
We must support the city of New York in this moment.
And despite expected pushback from the legislature, the governor said Adams should get to keep control of New York City schools for 4 more years,
which has been granted to every mayor since the year 2002.
And in a spending plan that dealt with crime, education, climate change, and housing, the governor called for paving potholes, planting 25 million new trees, building 15,000 housing units on unused state land at transit hubs and prisons, extending the 2nd Avenue subway west to Broadway, combating shoplifting, combating hate crime, building more swimming facilities, creating 200 new inpatient psych beds, and funding an AI consortium. She also insisted now is not the time to raise income taxes because it causes people to flee the state.
So we can slow down the outmigration that has resulted in the loss of $6 billion in tax receipts this year alone. We could have used that money.
The governor and the legislature are expected to clash on a number of issues: housing, mayoral control of the schools, and a demand by some in the legislature to tax the rich are just a few of the expected sticking points. I'm Marcia Kramer, CBS 2 News.
Now, according to New York Governor Kathy Hochul, she is proposing in the state budget to give $2.4 billion in aid to all of the migrants of New York City. And she wants to give New York Mayor Eric Adams over $2.4 billion to provide shelter beds for migrants, legal and case management services, and health services to migrants, in addition to providing them with housing subsidies and rent relocation programs to other parts of the state. And this is what Kathy Hochul wants to do for migrants, give them $2.4 billion in aid while the state is already dealing with a $4.3 billion deficit. And this has me shaking my head and even scratching it for a moment, because she's got a deficit, but she can go out here and find tangibles to give people who entered the country illegally. However, she couldn't find tangible money to be able to provide for the 120,000 homeless individuals who were already struggling before the migrant crisis even started. Now, all of this money that's being allocated, and even with the state with a deficit, really is mind-boggling. However, Kathy Hochul basically believes that this is logical because she believes that it would be a mistake not to spend money to take care of the migrants. However, I believe that the mistake is being made by going out here and continuing to enable these migrants and by giving them tangible money. And it's a mistake because it's not going to help improve the quality of life here in New York City, because once you go out here and incentivize people to continue committing a federal crime, all that's going to do is encourage more people to continue committing a federal crime. And when it comes to the migrants, we're basically here in New York City, basically already full. We don't need any more migrants, and continuing to go out here and give more money to migrants basically is going to enable more to come. And that's where Kathy Hochul and Eric Adams are making the big mistake. But they want to continue making this mistake because they are too proud to admit that they are wrong, and they want to continue virtue signaling in an effort to spite Donald Trump, even though they know that this isn't working. They want to go out here because they're caught in their feelings. They want to show New York, the president, that former president, that he just is wrong about immigration. But it's clear that their whole approach just isn't working. It's clear that it's not working, but they want to continue doing the same things, hoping to get a different result. Now, the rest of the world calls that insanity, but with the Blue Party, they just continue to go on. And Kathy Hochul thinks that if she can go to Joe Biden and Washington, she'll get that federal funding. But that's just not going to happen at all, because as long as there's a red Congress, there is not going to be any money allocated to migrants here in New York City or New York State. And there's not going to be any federal funds allocated to those migrants. But we have Kathy Hochul still believing that she's got a shot at being able to persuade Joe Biden, where New York Mayor Eric Adams wouldn't be able to do this. And this is, again, a white woman thinking that, oh, her white skin and her white privilege will have influence on white men, whereas the black male, when he came out here and asked for the funds, it wasn't serious. But when the white female does it, it's supposed to be serious. And all of this is all theatrics for an election year, because Kathy Hochul and Eric Adams already know that their approval ratings are in the crapper, and they know that the further they continue on with this entire situation, with the migrants, their chances of getting reelected are going to be slim to none. So what they're hoping to do is try to patch together some sort of cockamamie scheme in the hopes that this will make people believe that they want to try to solve the migrant crisis. However, most people here in New York are angry because the Kathy Hochul and Eric Adams basically enabled the migrant crisis, and they enabled the migrant crisis not based on a logical need to care for all of these people who entered the country illegally. No, they enabled the migrant crisis for vanity reasons, and it was enabled because the members of the Blue Party basically wanted to go out here and spite Donald Trump. And because they wanted to spite Donald Trump, what they wanted to do was show that they could go out here and take care of all of these migrants who entered the country illegally. And now that it's completely blown up in their face, they want to think that they can just go throw more money at the problem. But you can't continue to throw money at the problem, because what you've done is disrespect most of New Yorkers who have been waiting in line before for these services. And as New Yorkers have been waiting in line for these services, they feel disrespected. Moreover, you have many New Yorkers who are residents of this city who have homes who feel disrespected because their tax dollars are going to be taken and used to spend on people who entered the country illegally. And this disrespect is something that has many New Yorkers really rethinking voting for the Blue Party and really rethinking the entire blue majority in the city council and the blue majority in the state legislature, and this uniparty not really looking out for the interest of New Yorkers. Because when you have the government basically looking to give migrants priority over its citizens, even when you have a deficit that basically is starting to alienate most of New York's voters who are really rethinking getting involved with this blue party due to the complete mismanagement of this migrant crisis that they basically created. Now, they'll sit there and say, oh, it was Greg Abbott who created this migrant crisis by busing the migrants there. But no, it was their far-left sanctuary city policies that basically created all of this chaos, and their constant pride of trying to maintain a city policy and a state policy that is completely unsustainable, because it is completely unsustainable for a local city to go out here and take care of thousands and hundreds of thousands of migrants who entered the country illegally. No, that kind of job it should be in the hands of ICE. However, ICE was told by the state and the city of New York that they could not do their job. And that's why we're in this whole mess right now. And this whole mess basically shows how completely full of it that many of these Blue Party members are as related to their black constituents, because these Blue Party types, they'll sit there and say they can't do anything tangible for black people. However, New York State is basically having a budget deficit, but they can find tangible money to go out and be able to so-called take care of all of these migrants, but you can't find tangible money for all of the black voters who go out here and vote every year in every election for blue no matter who, but all they do is get screwed. And what happens is you told all of those black people you can't do anything for them, but you can go out here and do something for somebody who is not a citizen and has not voted for you. That is what's completely backwards about Kathy Hochul's budget proposal. She can find tangibles even in the middle of a state deficit of $4.3 billion. She can find $2.4 billion in migrant aid and says that, oh, it would be a mistake not to do anything about the migrants, when the mistake that you're making is alienating all of those voters who are seeing themselves being put last, and the state's quality of life not being put first. Because again, the easy way to solve the migrant crisis is to repeal the sanctuary city laws and sanctuary state laws and let the federal government do their job, because ICE's job is to deal with migrants. ICE's job is to deal with all of the bureaucracy as related to migrants. ICE's job is to go out here and vet these migrants. ICE's job is to go out here and do that job. But people like Kathy Hochul and Eric Adams, because they're trying to virtue signal and say that Donald Trump is a racist, and by extension ICE is a racist, what they want to do is try to say, oh, we're going to do that job better, and virtues in an effort to virtue signal. But that virtue signal is basically showing how immoral they are, because it's all about taking care of the migrants, because they want to create a covert contract with those migrants, hoping that they will go out here and vote blue no matter who as an expression of gratitude. But these people basically are showing how little appreciation they have for the Blue Party and are taking advantage of being in this country to possibly commit crimes and get their criminal operations going and their gangs going. But the Blue Party, again, because they are just so spellbound and desperate to try to get a new voting bloc, because they've alienated the black voting bloc, they think that they're going to be able to get this voting bloc, but will get a rude awakening like many other parts of the country when they find out that many of these people, their children, when they become of voting age, wind up voting red, because when it comes to many of these migrants, their children, once they become citizens, start voting red. But that can't stop many of these people who, again, are so woke that they can't see that they're sleeping and basically winding up playing a game where they're going to wind up checkmating themselves, because right now the quality of life in New York City is a Hades, and enabling more of the same is not going to create a better quality of life. But you can't explain this to the Arkham certified Kathy Hochul and Eric Adams, who continue to believe doing the exact same thing will yield a different result, but you're not going to yield a different result by doing the exact same things that did not work before. And spending money on migrants is only going to enable more dysfunction. That's what we've seen all over the world. And many countries are starting to wake up, and like Israel and many other countries are realizing they can't take care of these people who have no education, no skills, and really don't want anything but stuff free and to work off the books. And they're realizing this, and they're starting to deport many of these migrants because they realize that bringing people into a country with no education, no skills, and putting them up in your places of hotels, it only destroys your economy. And in the case of many of these people, they're not paying taxes. So what's happening long term to those countries, and what's going to long term happen in New York State, is New York State will basically implode because most of the people are going to leave New York City because of the quality of life going into a downward spiral due to all the crime created by the migrants, who cannot be arrested or prosecuted in some cases, or even be dealt with because the leftists don't want to deal with them. And when you have regular people leaving, the tax base winds up eroding, and as the tax base erodes, you still have to pay for those migrants, which further increases the deficits in the country, in the city and the state. And this flies over the heads of Kathy Hochul and the cream of wheat man Eric Adams, who really show how they don't understand basic economics and don't understand basic economics, because if you want to have an economy that works, you need a high quality of life, and you can't have a high quality of life when you continue to enable people who don't pay taxes to be made a priority. And again, people who don't pay taxes don't really add to your tax base, they add to the deficit. But Kathy Hochul and Eric Adams have not connected that dot because they're dumber than a box of rocks, and that's what's happening here. But when it comes to black people, they again can't seem to find no money to take care of black people that are homeless like Jordan Neely, because Jordan Neely would have really benefited from a campaign to help the homeless, and many of our veterans would have benefited from that. But many of these blue politicians can't use that to virtue signal, so they don't care about providing housing for our homeless and making our homeless first. No, they put New Yorkers last, and as they put New Yorkers last, I'm hoping many people take their booties to the poll to make them last on the next election for governor and mayor of New York. Now, if you want to see me make more videos like this, you can send a donation to the Patreon, the PayPal, or the Cash App by clicking the links in the description box. And if you want to pick up some of my positive black fiction on the SJS Direct imprint, you can find those books on Amazon.com in paperback and Kindle format. You can also find them at other online booksellers like Smashwords, the iBookstore, Google Play, and Barnes & Noble. That's all I have to say for this video. You can comment, rate, and subscribe. Coming to paperback and e-readers, John Haynes, Illuminati. The man who rules the world takes on the head of the global elite in this action-packed, all-new John Haynes series adventure. Pre-order your copy of John Haynes' Illuminati on Amazon.com and online booksellers everywhere. Now available in paperback and Kindle Unlimited. John Haynes, the man with nothing to lose. The man who rules the world runs into the irresistible force of a man with nothing to lose in this action-packed, all-new John Haynes series adventure. Get the regular and variant editions of John Haynes, the man with nothing to lose on Amazon.com today. Support black-owned and black-operated digital broadcast media. www.niceradionetwork.com. Nice Radio Network, broadcasting 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.